I go back to that seminal moment on April 5th, 1968, the day after Dr. King was killed, but I was staying with my grandparents because I was in school age, and my parents were school teachers and my other brothers were all school age, so I was staying with my grandparents. And so my grandfather's best friend and fellow deacon at the local church came down, as they would often come and talk to each other and spend time together. And I remember these words like it was yesterday. They killed King last night. And my grandfather, because he was a farmer, would often go to bed early because he had to get up early. And so he missed the 6:01 p.m. announcement from the day before.
Yeah.
That King had been shot and was mortally wounded. So I remember that, and I can't get it out of my head. And I'm thinking, why would anybody do that? That was my 5-year-old mind saying, in response to that news, why would anybody do that? And it has never left me. I was just talking to my wife about it earlier today, that seminal moment I'll never, ever forget. So fast forward, I found out stories about my own family involved in the civil rights movement, especially the voters' rights struggle. Everyone from my father, my uncles, and aunts. Some were arrested. My Uncle James, of course, was beaten within an inch of his life.
Yeah.
The night Jimmy Lee Jackson was killed. So my family, we, as the saying goes, we had skin in the game. We had skin in the game from the very start. And so it was very important to me to find out more about Dr. King. And so I started reading everything I could put my hands on about Dr. King. And it didn't hurt that his wife was from my same place, my same home area, Perry County, Alabama. And that her first cousin, Mr. William McMurray, was my high school principal. So Mrs. King grew up in Perry County. And this is a very strange twist that three men who had a tremendous impact on the civil rights movement, Dr. King, Dr. Abernathy, and Ambassador Young. Had the chance to meet Ambassador Young. But all of their wives came from Perry County, Alabama. And they were independent of each other. And so that's not something that happens every day, that three great men married three great women from the same little hamlet area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it stayed with me from that moment on, hearing on April 5th, 68, as a 5-year-old, and looking at and reading everything about Dr. King. And even today, I carry with me as I'm getting ready to travel out of town, this book. And this is not the only one. It's about famous quotations and things about King and his life. So just a sense of resonating with his spirit and the question that he asked. He says, or the statement he makes, he says, and it may not be a direct quote, life's most enduring question is, what are you doing for others? And so I take that to heart, to mean that if my life is going to have meaning, it's not just what I gain for myself, but what am I doing for others? And I add this to it, the other with a capital O. People who are ostracized, kicked out, kicked to the curb, as they say. And what am I doing for the person, those individuals? And a lot of work has to be done in that area. That's why I ordain women as deacons here at this church and even at previous churches I served. And it was novel to them. But I'm thinking about the King legacy, and hopefully my legacy is to be inclusive. When King talks about black and white together, being inclusive and being a follower of Jesus, to mean you have to be inclusive, although the Jesus legacy has been greatly abused, to justify slavery, to justify wars, to justify the taking of lands, the justification of the mistreatment of people, the justification for attempting to erase history and not tell the full story of history with this CRT piece, which is never meant to do anything but highlight the stories of people whose stories have been muted. But unfortunately, and I have to say it this way, the right-wing parties of our nation have taken that to say, don't talk about these things. And I've said to my congregants, what if the Romans came and said, we don't like how you mention us in the crucifixion of Jesus. Could you change that part of the narrative? It makes us feel uncomfortable. Well, when you get on the witness stand, the judge says, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And when you tell the truth, anybody's truth, there are going to be people who are hurt. But hopefully from the hurt, from those ashes will arise a phoenix that gives some hope for better days to come. And so when I look at Dr. King's life and even his death, he's not yet dead. In African traditional religion, a person is not dead until you stop calling their names. And so we continue to call his name. We continue to highlight his legacy. And more than that, I say to really honor King's legacy is to carry it forth and to not just clap your hands and say, oh, it was really wonderful what Dr. King did. And we have a holiday name for him. What are you doing in that same vein to reach out again to the other? And so I'm driven by that in terms of including women, especially black women, who, in the words of Malcolm X, who are the most denigrated persons in America, not a direct quote, but it's black women. So that's part of my mission and ministry, to include those who have previously been excluded. Because that's the example of Jesus. He reached out to persons who had been considered persona non gratas among society and tried to bring them in to say, you are part of the family of God too. And if we're going to be followers of Jesus and to carry forth the vision of Dr. King, we have to be more inclusive and bringing people together rather than dispersing people and pushing them apart.
Whenever we talk about Dr. King and just your studies of him, you encourage me to look at King more than just the "I have a dream" speech, as you've just talked here and mentioned the quote. There's so much more to the man. Absolutely,
I'm very fascinated even to this day. Even with a PhD in concentration with Martin Luther King studies, I still marvel at the things that are yet being discovered about his life and his commitment, and even his struggles with black people who were not all with him, because there were some black people who were accepted in white circles who liked their positions and being comfortable. And King, with the movement, took them out of the status of being, and I'll clean it up, the good Negro. So I have much respect for his legacy. I feel a connection again through his wife and my principal and that side of the family. And I've had an opportunity to meet 3 of the children. I met Yolanda before she passed. I met Martin III, who spoke at my church in Selma, Alabama. And I met Bernice at the same church at one of the Bridge Crossing Jubilees, as we remembered the voters' rights struggle in 1965. And so my statement to those who want to honor the King legacy is not to just talk about what he did, but do what he did in a 21st century perspective. Who can you reach out to? Who's being left out? Who's being excluded? And be a voice for those persons, as they say, be a voice for the voiceless.